Today we're doing 1-5 quadratic equations, day 4 and 5. So this day will be ending this section. Your learning goal is that you will be able to determine the most efficient method to use to solve quadratic equations and solve problems modeled by quadratic equations. This table will help you determine the most efficient technique to use when solving a quadratic equation. So I'm going to go over this. The first one is if your quadratic can be factored easily, then you want to factor it and use the zero product principle. So an example of that would be if you had something like this and you factor it, you need two factors of -6 that give you 5. So that'll be positive 6x and negative 1x. And what we're going to do is grouping. So I'm going to group these two and these two. So I'll take out a 3x, and that leaves me with x plus 2. I'm going to take out a -1, and that leaves me with x plus 2. And you set them equal to 0. And so zero product principle means that you'll get 3x minus 1 equals 0, so x equals 1/3. Or x plus 2 equals 0, so x equals -2. Okay, so if you can factor easily, you want to use the factoring method. Okay, if your quadratic has no constant term, then you also want to use factoring. So an example of this would be 6x squared plus 9x equals 0. So you could factor out a 3x, and that'll leave 2x plus 3. So that means 3x equals 0. So x equals 0. Or 2x plus 3 equals 0. So x equals -3/2. Okay? Then if your quadratic has no x term, the best method to use is to use the square root property. So if you had something like this, you would get the square by itself. And then you square root both sides. So you'll get plus or minus 2 over root 7. But you got to get or rationalize your denominator. So you're going to get plus or minus 2 root 7 over 7. Okay? And if you have a square, then you want to use the square root property. So if you have something like this, you don't want to FOIL, you want to square root both sides. So you'll get x plus 4 equals plus or minus square root of 5. Move the 4 over. And there you have it. The last method is the quadratic formula. You want to use that when your quadratic cannot be factored or the factoring is too difficult. So I'm going to do this one on the next page. If you have something like this that can't be factored, then the best way to do it is quadratic formula. So A equals 1, B is -2, C is -6. And you just plug it into the formula. Four AC all over 2A. And then you simplify what's under the radical. And then you break it down or simplify to 28. And dividing each one by 2. Here's your answer. Okay, we're going to look at this application problem. A rectangular parking lot has a length that is 3 yards greater than the width. So we don't know the width, but we know this is 3 yards greater. The area of the parking lot is 180 square yards. Find the length and the width. So you know area of a rectangle is length times width. We know the area, which is 180. The length is W plus 3. And the width is just W. So distributing the W, we get W squared plus 3W. Then you want to set your equation equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract the 180. And then here, you can either factor, you can use quadratic formula, or you can do completing the square. So I'm going to factor it. So that would be 15 and -12. And then you set each one equal to 0. Now remember, W is our width. So for us to have a -15 yards as a width is not possible. So that means the width has to be 12 yards. So if the width is 12 yards, the length would be 12 plus 3, which is 15 yards. And there you have it.